Hello, learners and students, and once again, welcome to my channel Accounting Fun. How are, how are you all? Hope you all are fine. Today, we are going to discuss about the financial statement analysis. As I have already told you about the P&L statement, the income statement, the balance sheet, the cash flow statement, all these things which are prepared. These all are the statements which are prepared and presented to the end users. So these end users can be the investors, the shareholders, any other stakeholders, government, tax authorities, all those people who have any kind of interest in our business. But these financial statements have got certain kind of limitations. So let us start with seeing what all these financial statements all about and what are the limitations of this. So the figures contained in the balance sheet and P&L account are of limited use. So basically, when I give these statements to a government and when I give this statement to my equity shareholders, both of them will interpret them differently, right? Because investors just want to have their profit share. So they are interested to just know about the profit, that how much profit my firm is making. Government is interested to know to collect tax. So they just want to know what is my revenue so that they can collect that amount of tax from me and any other kind of share which need to be paid by me for my business. So to bring more meaning to this data contained in the financial statement, it is necessary that this data needs to be analyzed and interpreted and evaluated by each and every stakeholder in their own manner. And to make this analysis is systematically simplified and classified, whereas interpretation gives meaning and significance to that data. Now let us see what are the limitations of this financial statement. Now, because of the difference in accounting methods between companies, these comparisons become difficult. Why? Because some companies use different methods. Like in this, I have shown you an example that one company is using LIFO method to value inventory. What is this? This part basically comes in cost accounting. So whenever we will be discussing about the cost accounting, you will get to know more in depth about the LIFO, FIFO, and everything. But just to give a brief introduction, because of this example, I can tell you that LIFO is when whichever stock comes in your company at last, you consume that stock first. So that is last in first out method to value inventory. Again, when you value that inventory which comes in first, you take it out that first for your consumption or production purpose. That is FIFO method. So that's what the difference. This is just an example to show you how financial statements differ from company to company and how do investors interpret them differently. Now let us look what are the different types of financial analysis. So first of all, we have on the basis of material used, we have external analysis and internal analysis. And on the basis of modus operandi means on the basis of mode of operations, we have horizontal and vertical analysis. So, what do we exactly mean when we say external analysis, internal analysis, or let's say horizontal vertical analysis? Let's discuss about that. But before just look at what are the limitations of this, there are various limitations in terms of the PESTEL. So, PESTEL is your political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal factors which have an impact on this industrial and economic trends, subjectivity, and changes within the company. So, analysts should look beyond the ratios. Ratios can give you a figure, a number that okay this is this thing and this is that thing, but how to interpret them that totally depends on the end user of it. So that's why companies usually prepare two kind of statement. First one is a comparative statement, second one is the common size statement. There's not much difference between them, but when you name it as inter-firm and intra-firm, then it is comparative and common size statements. So comparative statements, common size statements, and accounting ratios, all these are analytical techniques which are used to examine the relationships among the financial statement items. So first of all, we prepare and interpret financial statement in comparing the common size form. And for this, we have a horizontal analysis. So horizontal analysis show for a single firm what is the analysis between change in the percentage form. So in simple terms, what was my profit last year? Say it was 10% and now it has a growth of a 10% this year. So this is how I compare. I take the last year profit of my firm only, this year profit of my firm only, and when I show a comparison between both of them, it is called as horizontal analysis. Let me make you this more understandable through an example. So I have given you an example that a company, Clover Corporation, December 31, 2008 and 2007 comparative balance sheet and income statement. Let's have a look at that statement. So basically in 2007 they have an asset of 23,500 and this year they have a 12,000. So they have a percentage decrease in that. So how much amount increased or decreased? So what is the amount? That amount, the difference of amount will come in the amount column. Say in the cash case, so we have a difference of 11,500. It has decreased by 11,500. We will take out a percentage of that, and whatever amount the percentage will get, we will write in the percentage column. Similar for other assets like accounts receivable, inventory, prepaid expenses, and then we have a total of it. Then same for the fixed assets. So this is what this statement actually helps me. It helps me to analyze that where I was last year and where I am standing this year. So am I a growth firm? Am I a declining firm? Am I a growing firm? I can name my firm like this. So this analysis helps me in that. And how do we calculate change? We calculate the change by subtracting the base year figure. The base year is the last, it can be the last year or it can be the year from which you are comparing your current year figures. So you subtract the base year figure from your current year and then you get the change. And to calculate the percentage change, you simply divide that dollar change which you get right now from the base year figure and multiply it by 100%. So you will get the change in the percentage form. So let me show you an example for this. See here. So as I was talking about 11,500 decreased amount and the percentage decrease is 11,500 divided by 23,500 into 100%, which gives me 48.9%, which is the percentage decrease in my cash comparative to the last year 2007, in the present year 2008. So let me show you for every asset. You can calculate it by pausing this video, and in case you feel any doubt you can put up in the comment box anywhere. And then same for the accounts receivable, inventory, prepaid expenses we have done, and same for the fixed assets. So moving on, we see that we could do this for liabilities and stockholders equity, but in the same manner like I have just shown you for the asset in this one, you can in the same manner do it for liabilities and equity. So let's see for the income statement. In income statement we have net sales, wherein we subtracted the cost of goods sold from that and we get the gross margin. So what all were my figures in 2007 and what all are figures in 2008? I will compare them in the same manner as I have done for balance sheet. In the amount column I will write the difference between the last year figures and present year figures, and in the percentage column I will divide that difference amount from the current year's from the base year amount and get the percentage like this. So suppose in the first one, in the net sales, I subtracted 4,80,000 from 5,20,000, I get 40,000. I divided 40,000 by 4,80,000, so I get somewhere around 8.3% increase in my net sales, which is again a positive sign for the company, increase in sales, right? In the same manner, I did it for cost of goods sold, gross margin, operating expenses, net operating income. Just remember one thing: you don't start, subtracting as if that you are subtracting cost of goods sold from net sales. Don't do it for the gross margin. That you simply subtract 1,65,000 from 1,60,000. No, you have to find out the change. So you will check that how much is the difference between both of the figures, and then you will divide it to get the percentage. Now, in the cost of goods sold, like there was an increase from 14.3% and operating expenses increased by 2.1%. So these increased costs more than offset the increase in sales, yield an overall decrease in net income. If you will see in the end, my overall net income has declined in the current year. So this has given me a trend which I denote by trend percentage. So trend percentage indicate or state several years financial data in terms of a base year. So many times you might have seen when you might have seen that business channels wherein they show that what is the performance of a stock, what is the performance of a share. All this is found through this kind of trends only. How does trend percentage is calculated? So we simply divide the current year amount by the base year amount and we multiply it by 100% to get the percentage of trend. So let's look at a quick short example for this. That for berry products for the year 2003 to 2007 we have financial statement, and we will complete a trend analysis using these amounts to see what we can learn about the company. So let's begin. We have sales for this company, we have cost of goods sold, we calculated the gross margin. for the year 2003 to 2007, and every year they are ending it on December 31. So most of the companies have their books closing on March 31st because of the accounting year system, but that's not a problem. We just need to find out the figures in this. So let's see what will be the gross change for 2004. So what we did, we divided the 2004 amount by 2003 amount. 2003 we took as our base year. So for that, our percentage will be 100%. And in 2004, what is the change that we are looking at? So 2,90,000. Initially, my sales were 2,75,000. It increased to 2,90,000. So there was an increase to 15,000. So 15,000 divided by 2,75,000. 2,90,000 divided by 2,75,000 into 100, it gives me a percentage increase of 105%. That means that my sales has increased up to 105% this year. Same goes for the cost of goods sold, it raised to 104% and gross margin raised to 108%. Similarly, for other year 2005, 6 and 7, I have calculated this, and by analyzing this trend, we can see that cost of goods sold is increasing faster than sales, and that's why my overall gross margin is increasing at a slow pace. So which means I need to cut my cost down or increase my sales to bring it at the similar pace. If I need to plot it on a graph, we can draw it like this. We can show the years on the x-axis, the percentages on the y-axis, and then we can use these trend percentages to construct a graph so we can see the trend overall time. Coming next, we have the common size statement. Till now we were comparing. Now we will see the common size statement. So common size statements basically use percentages to express the relationship of individual components to total within a single period. So this is a vertical analysis. The comparative statement are known as horizontal analysis and common size statement are known as vertical analysis. Why vertical analysis? Because we are seeing that what is the percentage of A in my overall profit. So I have say three things, A, B and C. So what is the percentage component of A, what is the percentage component of B and C individually in the overall contribution of my profit. See, just like this pie, if you see in this figure that this entire circle is made out of various pie kind of figures, I just separated the red pie from this to see that how much overall red pie is contributing in this entire figure. So in income statement, all items are expressed as a percentage of net sales, since sales are the only thing which will generate the revenue and turnover for my company. So on this, I calculate my gross margin percentage. To calculate gross margin percentage, I simply divide my gross margin by sales, and this measure indicates that how much of each sales is left after deducting the cost of goods sold to find out the profit or turnover for my company. And in balance sheet, all items are expressed as a percentage of total assets. So if it's an income statement, you will express them in terms of sales. If it's a balance sheet, you will express them in terms of total assets. What are common size financial statements? So they are particularly useful when comparing data from different companies. So see, here I have two companies, say Wendy's and McDonald's, both have their net income for the 2002, and then there's a percentage. So I have compared their percentage that they have, say Wendy's have a net percentage of 8% and McD have a percentage of 5.80%. Now let's look at the another example. So we will prepare the common size statements now. How we are going to do this? Just have a look. Again, we have the net sales, cost of goods sold for Clover Corporation. Net sales will act as a base for all of this. So net sales will be again 100%. And now I will divide my each and every component, cost of goods sold, gross margin, operating expense, net operating income, interest, and profit before income and tax, profit before income tax. I will deduct the income tax from the net income. Each and every component will be compared against the net sales. And when I do so, how I do it? So see, when I divided net sales by net sales, it is 100%. When I divided the percentage of cost of goods sold, say 3,60,000 by net sales, that is 5,20,000. So I get 69.2%. Similarly, for 2007, I did it. I get 65.6% for 2007 and 69.2% for 2008. Whenever you feel you're not getting it, anything, you can just pause the video, have a look at it calmly, and then you move forward. Now see, if I prepare this entirely, what conclusions can we draw? We have got this amount of percentage. So what we see that overall net income has decreased from 2007 to 2008. It was 4.7 in 2007 and it decreased to 3.4 coming to 2008. Let's look at some questions on the basis of this. So which of the following describes horizontal analysis? A side-by-side comparison of two or more financial statements, right? As I mentioned, in horizontal analysis, we compare for the same firm for different years. Now, next thing which we are moving, next part for the video is we will be learning about the ratios. I've already made a video about this, but again I'm explaining you this because both these concepts, say comparative statement, common size statements, and ratios are somewhere interrelated. So I just want to show you again that financial ratios are useful to common stakeholder who will be investing in our company on the basis of few numbers. They are not going to look at our balance sheet, income statement, and each and every account. They don't have much time to look in such long details. So they will be looking at just few numbers, which will be the ratios that will be expressing the profitability, liquidity, and various other long-term solvency, operating efficiency, and various other analysis of my company. So ratios are basically a numerical relationship between one item and another. It could be expressed in percentage form, rate form, or in numerical form, whatever the companies feel correct comparing about this. And what is the importance of ratio analysis? So I measure liquidity position, long-term solvency, operating efficiency, overall profitability, and trend analysis. What are the limitations of ratio analysis? So ratios ignore qualitative factors. They just give you numbers, quantity. They don't show you what are the qualitative factors. And trends, not the actual ratios, are useful. Limitations of accounting information, change in accounting procedure, variations in GOP. What is GOP? General operating conditions. Ratios are misleading, price level changes, limitations of standards to compare. How do we compare or classify the ratios? Based upon functions, we have liquidity, solvency, profitability, and activity ratios. I have again got some few questions for you based upon these ratios: liquidity, solvency, profitability, and activity ratios. You can just pause the video, solve them, and then you can put up your answers in the comment box. We will discuss about these questions in our next video. So let me give you a brief idea about how to solve this. So we have working capital in the first question and current ratio. Current ratio, as we all know, the formula is current assets upon current liabilities. And for working capital, we simply subtract the current liabilities from current assets. So you will get the current from the current ratio, you will get current assets amount. It will be 2.5 current liability through cross multiplication. Put that value in the working capital when you will do CA minus CL. So you will take 2.5 CL minus CL, which will give you 1.5 CL. So when you will divide this 1.5 from 60,000, you will get your current liabilities as 40,000. And from this you will get your current assets as 2.5 into 40,000, which will be somewhere around 1 lakh. So your ratio will be 1 lakh to 40,000. So that will give you 2.5 is to 1. Simply, in the similar manner, you will do you have to simply put the formulas, and you will deduct the sales return from total sales. That is from 5 lakh 25,000, you will deduct 25,000, you will get 5 lakh. And then to calculate the GPR, you have to divide gross profit by sales. So 1 lakh upon 25,000, you will get your gross profit ratio. Do your next question by yourself. In case you face any challenge, put your comments in the comment box below, and I would be happy to solve your queries. Now, this is again one question. Just go through these questions. These are very simple and basic questions, and when you will look at these questions carefully, you will find out very easy to solve. Now, coming to the next, we have earning per share. What is earning per share? I have already made a video about the earnings per share. I am again giving just a brief about this. That earning per share is simply when you subtract the preferred dividend. So earnings per share is that amount which we are going to pay to our equity shareholders. So whatever we have to pay our equity shareholders, as we all know that equity shareholders always come in the last while distributing the profits. First of all, we pay off our fixed liabilities, the debenture holders, and to the bank loan and everything. Then we come to the equity. In equity, we also first pay to the preference shareholders. After giving to them whatever is left, that is for the equity shareholders. So we simply divide the preferred dividend from net income and divide it by number of shares outstanding. And whenever a ratio divides an income statement balance by a balance sheet balance, the average for the year is used in the denominator. So that's why we have mentioned the word average. Now, this measure indicates that how much income was earned for each share of common stock outstanding. So, simply how much my each shareholder will be earning. Next, we have the price earnings ratio. So, we divide the market price per share by earnings per share. And for the dividend payout ratio, we divide dividend per share by earnings per share. I've already made a video on this. It's just a go through for all of you so that you can get an idea that what exactly it all about. Dividend yield ratio. So we are simply checking that how much dividend is yielding out against the market price of each share. So this ratio basically identifies the return in terms of cash dividend on the current market price of the stock. Then we have the ROTA, or say return on total assets. So we take net income, we add the interest expense by deducting the tax rate from it, and we divide it by average total assets. So this ratio measures that how well my assets I have utilized, that how much turnover are they generating basically. And then what is the return on my common stockholders' equity? That is how much return will be available to my equity shareholders. So how well the company has employed the owner's investments to earn income. So we have something called as operating leverage and financial leverage. Financial leverage involves that acquiring assets with funds at a fixed rate of interest, and then return on investment in assets, fixed return on borrowed fund. That is a if return on investment in assets is greater than the fixed rate of return on borrowed fund, that's a positive financial leverage because my company is highly indicating high profits. And if my return on investment is less than my fixed rate of return on borrowed fund, that's a negative financial leverage. All these are indicators basically which my shareholders, investors, and all other users of my financial information will be using to find out that whether my company is highly solvent, sound, financially sound or not. Is it a company they need to invest in or not? Let's quickly look at this question. So, which of the following statements is true? That negative financial leverage is when the fixed return to a company's creditors and preferred stockholders is greater than return on total assets. Positive financial leverage is when the fixed return to a company creditors and preferred stockholders is greater than the return on total assets. Or financial leverage is the expression of several years financial data in percentage form in terms of a base year. So we clearly know that third statement is not at all correct. Positive financial, when companies fixed return to a company's creditor, obviously it's not possible that your liabilities are greater than your assets. So obviously the correct statement is the first one. You can look out that first statement is the correct. Now we will look at what is the book value per share. So book value per share is nothing but simply the total amount of equity present with my company when we divide it by number of shares outstanding is known as book value per share. And it measures the amount that would be distributed to the each shareholders of common stock if all assets are sold at their balance sheet carrying amount, if all creditors were paid off. So simply if I am shutting down my company, I am not carrying forward my operations anymore, then I will calculate this. Here's an example, you can have a look at it. And basically, it is used to compute and interpret financial ratios that would be useful to a short term creditor. You can see in this example, like we have again Norton Corporation, we have cash, we have other kind of assets for them, current assets, the total current liability, what is the sales, what is the cost of goods sold. Then we will find out the working capital. So, what is working capital? Any access in current assets over current liability is known as working capital. So simply, my that capital which is in the working form. So we all know that current assets and current liabilities have a life of 1 year or max to max 1 to 3 years. So that's why they are current assets because they are quickly convertible into cash. And working capital is not free; it must be financed with long-term debt and equity. So the excess of my current assets over current liability is known as working capital. My that capital which is working. Simple working capital, capital which is working. This is again a brief example about the working capital. And if I have to calculate the current ratio, so current ratio is simply the ratio between the current assets and current liabilities. And ideal ratio is always considered to be 2 is to 1. That is, my current asset should be minimum twice of my current liability so that I can pay off my short-term debt using my current assets. And a declining ratio is a sign of deteriorating financial condition, or it might result from eliminating obsolete inventories. So if I have some inventory which is not at all working, I mean, it's not selling off, it's just there in your stores and it's just a cost for you. Over a time, it will not remain an asset, but it will convert into a liability for you. So it's good that you convert your inventories quickly into assets. So in the last question, like we have current assets of 65,000 and current liabilities of 42,000. When we divide it, we get 1.55. So it's greater than, it's like 1.55 is to 1. It's again a good condition, but a company needs to work more to increase its current assets. Now we have next the liquidity ratio. Another name for liquidity ratio is asset test or quick ratio. So what is the quick asset? So quick assets is all other all those current assets apart from my inventory that will be quickly convertible into cash, because we all know that stock will take a little time to convert into cash, but other thing like marketable securities, debtors, current notes, accounts receivable, bills receivable, marketable securities, all this will convert into cash very quickly. So that's why it's known as quick ratio. Since it will quickly convert into cash, so it's quick ratio and it measures a company's ability to meet its obligation without liquidating inventory. So how much my company is efficient with its resources that it can convert all its resources quickly into cash without even selling inventory or without even bringing inventory into action. Next, we have accounts receivable turnover ratio, or we might term this as debtors turnover ratio. So it is simply calculated by dividing my sales from the average accounts receivable. And how do we find out this average accounts receivable? We take the opening balance of accounts receivable, we add the closing balance, we divide it by 2, we get the average accounts receivable. And to get this ratio, I divide my sales from this average accounts receivable. And this ratio measures that how many times my company can convert its receivables into cash every year. And through this I find out my average collection period. What is average collection period in an entire operating cycle of 365 days of my company? How many times my debtors are taking to convert into cash? So that means if I sold a good, after how many days I collect payment for this is called as the average collection period. So in this case, the 27.03% was my ratio. So that means accounts receivable turnover ratio. That means I'm taking nearly 13.5, or let's say 14 to 15 days to collect cash from my debtors. Next, we have on the list is inventory turnover ratio. So, as the name suggests, that how much time my inventory is taking to get converted into cash. So, I divide my cost of goods sold by average inventory. Average inventory is again calculated by taking opening balance of inventory. We simply add the closing balance of inventory divided by 2. We get the average inventory. And this ratio measures that how many times a company's inventory has been sold and replaced during the year. The quick the quicker this ratio gets converted, or the closest it's to let's say 1 or anything, so that means my company is taking less time to convert inventory into cash. That means I can efficiently and quickly sell off my assets as soon as my stock enters into the say storeroom, godown, or whatever it is, or say in the locker room. Quickly it gets converted into cash, quickly it moves out to sale in the market. Let's see an example for this. So I have a cost of goods sold for 1,40,000. I divided by average inventory. For that, my opening inventory was $10,000. Closing was 12,000. I divided by 2. I get the average inventory is 11,000. So I divided by 11,000 by 1,40,000. I get 12.73, which is the inventory turnover ratio for my company. And it again indicates that how many times the company's inventory has been sold and replaced during a year. Next on the board we have average sales period. So like we have average collection period for our debtors, in the same manner we have average sales period for the inventory. That means in 365 days, how many days my inventory is taking to convert into cash, or to convert into sales. Next we are going to discuss about the financial ratio that are useful to the long-term debtor or for the long-term creditor. So basically, long-term creditor use EBIT, that is earnings before income, expense and taxes, EBIT, or the net operating income. We will use this information to calculate the ratios to measure the well-being of the long-term creditors. So for this, we have first of all interest earned ratio. Times interest earned is basically when we simply divide my interest expense from the EBIT. So EBIT I add the income taxes to that, and I take divided by interest expense. So it is the most common measure of a company's ability to protect its long-term creditors. Next, we have debt to equity ratio. So it tells me that how many liabilities are there against my stockholders' equity, and it indicates the relative proportion between debt and equity on a company's balance sheet. If a company has a positive financial leverage, if it wants to have a positive financial leverage, then they will prefer high debt. And in practice, debt to equity ratio just varies from 0 to 3, somewhere in between. And creditors prefer less debt and more equity because equity represents a buffer of protection. So in this example, you can see that this ratio indicates the relative proportion of debt to equity on a company's balance sheet. So like it's 0.48. That means this company is more depending on equity. So it might mean that they want to pay off high dividends, or they have enough revenue, they have enough amount of profits that they can pay off to their equity shareholders. That's why they are having high on equity. If a company has less profit, they are less on equity, then they will keep their equity share low and keep the debt proportion high, because it's easy to pay off your fixed cost, which is your interest for debt, and it's quite bit difficult. It will be difficult to pay off your dividends if you are paying it every year. Here are some sources you can go through, but that's all in today's video. Do put up your thoughts in the comment box, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe Accounting Fun for more videos. That's all for today. Thanks a lot.